So next up is SSH configuration intermediate level by leyrer.
Hello, and thanks for the warm welcome. Come in, there's still plenty of room left. It's nice. Welcome to SSH configuration intermediate level. Before we get started, you probably already know the hashtag for this conference is BalCCon2k23. My name is leyrer. I want to emphasize I'm from Austria, not from Germany, just in case. I'm doing IT stuff for over 40 years now, so I'm officially old. I collect old computers. That's why I have an affinity to old SSH command line options. If you have a next cube lying around somewhere collecting dust, let me know. That's one of the few computers I still miss in my collection. I have to bring them to the vintage computing rooms at some point in time. So feel free to tweet, or no, don't tweet, Trude, Mastodon about this stuff. Twitter is dead, thankfully. I will put the slides up on my homepage later on, so you get all the slides. You don't have to take pictures if you want to, feel free, but you don't have to. Before we get into the details, a word or two on the syntax used in this talk. I use command line syntax defined in the Open Group Space Specification issue 7, 2018, which is also IEEE standard 1003.1 from 2017, which basically says if you put a backlash as the last character in the line, it shall be interpreted as a line continuation. To show you what I mean is on your left-hand side, you see it's not a regular expression, but a regular example of an ls command, and what I will use is the syntax on the right-hand side, so break it up a little bit so it's easier to read on the slides, but still it's one command to be entered in the line. But you can enter it in this way as well. Again, I'm talking about SSH configuration intermediate level. So to get a feel for the audience, I know a few of you I know, so I know you're in the wrong room. But for the others, who has entered an SSH command into a command line before? Good, you're in the right room. Who has his own config file for SSH? Okay, you're in the wrong room. Who has set up public key authentication for his or her SSH key? Again, you're in the wrong room. I'm sorry. Please stay. I'm happy for you to stay. Please correct me if I'm wrong at something. If you have an interesting detail, feel free to fill in. Otherwise, I will guarantee you will get bored. I'm addressing people that have entered something like this. Goodbye. Cheers. Bye, Hetty. If you have entered this but have not done anything else with SSH, you're in the right session. You're welcome here. And hopefully I can give you a hint or two on how you can make your life easier. Right, so this you have probably seen before. SSH, I want to connect as the user leyrer to the server sshserver.example.com, right? Easy enough. Usually if you're not too much into command line, or if you're just starting out as a novice IT person, you probably type this in several times a day, several times an hour, several times a minute if you're desperate. Works quite well as long as the usernames and the server names are like this. What do you do if you have a server name like this? That's Hazyul Gwik Mazna, also called Zyul Gwasmanza, and is from the Lovecraft universe. It's an elder god with elongated arms, a round, sleepy-looking head, and a spherical body. But you don't want to put that into the command line every time, right? And usually you don't use the history, so you have to type it in every time. And as we all know, and I would assume most of you are system administrators, I will not ask the developers to out themselves. We system administrators or DevOps or site reliability engineers, we are lazy, right? We don't want to do too much work. We want to do the minimal amount of work for the maximum amount of gratitude and bonuses and praise we can get. So thankfully, SSH provides us with quite a few mechanisms to make our lives easier, to help us not typing in this abomination of a host name every time I want to connect to it. So the thing that SSH provides us is the so-called SSH config file. You can have at least 3, you usually have 3 or more of these lying around in your system. 2 or 3. So you can give it command line options. We already gave the command line option username at server. But you also have a config file in your home directory. So that's what we are going to talk about. And you could also have system-wide configuration settings in the etc SSH directory. If you have a nice sysadmin, they are in the minority, but I know they are out there. They might even provide you with a global configuration that is actually useful out of the box. If not, I'm going to show you how you can do your own and make your life a lot easier. So we're talking about SSH config. In case you're a beginner and haven't had much exposure to Linux before, the tilde on the left-hand side, or tilde at the left-hand side, it's not only a wonderful hack space, but it's also a placeholder for your home directory. So usually it's /home/leyrer, but instead of typing /home/leyrer every time, I just type tilde. .sh, that's a directory, and the config file, that's the one we are going to work with. If the directory or the file does not exist, just create it, use the mkdir command, use Midnight Commander, use the tool of your choice to create that file. Mount the Linux home directory as a Samba share on a Windows machine if you want to. If that is your kink, it's fine. Make sure you have the right permissions, so it should be only readable to you, and the files in there should also be only readable and editable by you. So that's a 700 or 600 if you want to use the change mode command. So what does this have to do with the command that we want to simplify? Well, SSH actually has a very nice feature called hostname aliases. So in my config file, I can define with the host statement an alias for my server name, or with the hostname directive to be correct. So host, the keyword host here restricts the following declarations, and we will add more to the host name that you see up there. With several more statements, but right now let's concentrate on the host name. So for a host for which I define the alias demo, I defined that the host name should be sshserver.example.com. There's a lot more to it. We will get into it a little bit later. The nice thing is I can not only define one alias, I can define several of these aliases. So I can define for ssh-server.example.com, I can define the alias demo or D1 if I'm really lazy, or if I'm a little bit drunk after yesterday's Iraqi leaks, I could even call it Popocatépetl. If you have your keyboard set up right, this is rather easy to type. So that's one thing. But what else can we do? We can do wildcards. So I can define for the hostname %h.example.com, I define the aliases SMTP, IMAP4, and www. So whenever I enter SSH SMTP, it will automatically expand to smtp.example.com, which is a very nice feature. And as I said before, we can not only do host names, we can also do other stuff like usernames. So I can not only add a host name, but I can also add the username to that keyword host. And what does that mean? Well, let's have a look at it, right? So I do have something prepared here. I have a small Linux box, and I want to edit my, no, I'm not an Emacs user, .ssh. I'm missing an additional arm for that, so config. As always, excuse my typos, I I'm very bad at typing while presenting. And I can, if I find my focus, I can edit my config file. So I can add the host keyword, I can add my two aliases. So it's, for me, this is demo and bastion. We will see what we need to see later. We'll point it to the server sshserver.example.com and to the user leyrer. So if I save this, I can do, let's just check this. I can do what I've shown you before. I can just do the regular command that you know. Is this visible enough? Back rows? Good? Excellent. I can do an SSH as the user leyrer to the server ssh-server.example.com. As I connect for the first time, nudge, nudge, it asks me, is this really the server I want to connect to? Of course, I verified the fingerprint and everything. I connect to the server. And, of course, it asks me for the password because the server is still an old server and set up with username password authentication. And I'm finally connected to the server SSH server. So that's what you're used to. But if I disconnect, and remember, I did SSH/config. I created an alias. So what I can do now is SSH demo. So I give it just the alias, and it will automatically pull the configuration from the config file and say, okay, he wants to connect to demo. That's actually the server sshserver.example.com. Oh, and he wants to use the username leyrer for that. And apparently, it does what it says on the label. I'm connected to the server sshserver.example.com, and it asks me for my password. And I'm again connected to the server. So already a huge improvement over typing the whole string every time I want to connect to the server, right? So that's that. The nice thing is, and we will dive into this a little bit deeper later on, I can also have multiple of these settings. So I can have one for the test server, one for the production server. If I want to take down the server, of course, that's the best thing to do. But I can also have an asterisk, a little star as the alias name, and that's basically a catch-all. So if I have not specified anything specific, all the settings I define under the host asterisk will be applied. So if I connect to SSH demo, it will use the username leyrer. But for all other systems, it will per default use the username Tesla to connect, which is rather handy if you have multiple productions machines with the same user. You don't have to specify that every time you want to connect to one of these servers. And you combine the asterisks with host names and all the good stuff that we're used to know. So after 13 minutes of me blabbing along here on the podium, we already went from, I haven't even counted how many characters there are, from a long command line to SSH demo. I call this a success. Thank you very much for your attention. Have a nice day. No, we are not done, because you noticed when I connect to the server, SSH demo, still asks me for my password. First of all, username password is old, is insecure. We don't want to use that anymore. Passwords get lost or found at some torrent or something. So what can we do? What can we do to get rid of these pesky passwords, because they are annoying, they are insecure, they are not state of the art. We don't want that. Well, there's actually a solution for that, surprisingly, and it's called SSH public key authentication. So it uses proper cryptography, so not crypto, not the Web3 blah blah stuff, hot air stuff, but proper cryptography to use public-private key cryptography, so asymmetric cryptography, to authenticate you to the server and to identify you to the server as well. So this is the stuff you want to use. If you don't use it yet, follow along. It's easy to set up, and it's really, really, really helpful and good, and will take you to a happy place. So for the asymmetric cryptography, which I'm not going to explain to you, there are already gazillions of videos and talks and blog posts for the older generation out there explaining how asymmetric cryptography works. Why is cryptography such a hard word to do? I don't know. What you need and what we are going to create are two key files, two keys that will open the lock to the kingdom. You have a public key, which we will put on the SSH servers. Don't be afraid if you don't know what I'm talking about. I will show it and explain it to you. It's nothing to be afraid of. I don't bite unless you want me to. And the private key, which is on your PC, laptop, device of your choice. And as the name private implies, you should never give that out. You should never show that. You should never give it away. You should not put it away. I have stories about Austrian IT government solutions which do not follow this thing. Ask me over a beer. So, as I said before, we need to create the public and the private key. How do we do that? Surprisingly, there's a command for that. It's called SSH keygen. SSH, of course, because we work with OpenSSH, and keygen for key generation. And this, you can start this off just without any parameters, and it will generate a key for you. Sorry, this is the minimum amount of additional parameters I would recommend. I can't force you, but I would strongly recommend at least a few of those. So from bottom, let's start from the bottom. -C stands for comment, and this will embed a comment of your choice to the key. If you have more than one key, and I strongly recommend you do, we will come to that in a minute, having a comment with each key is really, 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 really helpful in identifying which key you are currently using, which key you already uploaded, which key you haven't uploaded. And of course, also for the sysadmin of the server, they can check whose key that is. I mean, we can talk about that, but at least it gives them an indication whose key that is and whom to contact about that key in case there's a question about it. So I strongly recommend, again, I can't force you, but I strongly recommend that you always set a comment with some sort of description, your username, your email address, the service you generate this key for. So maybe generate one key for GitHub, so that would be leyrer's key for GitHub. Generate one key for GitLab, leyrer's key for GitLab, and at least you know what this key, why you generated this key and what it's for. Generate a key for the local VM you're testing stuff, or for demo purposes like here for BalCCon. The -f or -f, that specifies the file name SSH keygen saves your keys to. Again, it will just create an, I think it's ID or RSA ID. I prefer to have my file names more legible and more understandable. So if you have, like me, like 20, 30, 50 keys, it gets cumbersome if you don't have some sort of naming scheme. Again, if you don't have a naming scheme for files yet, because you're just starting in IT, there are very excellent talks on that subject, on how to name files on the interwebs. Search for them, it will help you in the long run. And of course, naming things is one of the hard things in IT, apart from cache invalidation and one-off errors. So, the last parameter for SSH keygen that I'm using here, and we don't have to use that much longer, is the -t, which specifies which type of key you want to generate. Per default, SSH keygen still creates RSA keys. The good old RSA keys we know for centuries, decades. Let's not over-exaggerate. For decades, still working good as long as you use a proper key length, but they're getting a little outdated, and of course they are also rather big. What we are using here is ED 25519, which uses curve 25519, that's where the name comes from, which is an elliptic curve. It's small, it's easy to generate, it's what the cool kids use these days. And I can only hardly recommend it. It's a lot easier, especially if you want to copy it around and handle it. And also if you're into IoT or small devices, it's easier to handle on those as well. So, again, I have a small demo, but I have to. Dang. Of course. Inception, one level too many. So, where's my second screen? I think the mouse is over there, but I want it over here. Where is the exit? Da. Okay, here you are. Come with me. Come with me. No. Where's? Got it. All is good. Found my cursor. So, that's the command we already did. I want to do the next one. I'm copying this because I'm very bad at typing. So we want to do SSH keygen. We want to create an ED25519 key. We want to save it in our home directory, in the .ssh directory, and want to save it as demo.ed25519, and we have a comment for it. Hooray! And of course, it's asking me for a password. Nope. It's not asking you for a password. It's asking you for a passphrase to limit the access to the key. So it's not a password, it's a passphrase. It also says here. Let's see if I can do this 2 times in a row without. Yes. So if we let's see if I can. Yep. Tmux to the rescue. So I entered my passphrase. And it says, okay, your identification has been saved into the file demo ed25919, and the public key, as I said before, we're creating 2 keys into the demo.ed25519.pub. And it shows me the fingerprint for the key, and it shows me some random image art, because apparently humans are better at remembering pictures, so you can set up your SSH configuration to show this every time you log into a server and compare these. And that's a topic for another talk. If you want me to, I can go into this as well. So what actually happened is, if I find the focus of the right window, too many windows, here we are. If I take a look into my .ssh directory, I now have two additional files called demo.ed259.pub and the same without the pub for the private key. So this actually matches with what I've prepared as a backup slide in case the demo gods don't like me today. We talked about this. And again, the important thing here is there's a private key and a public key. The one with the pub, where you go out and have a drink, you can share that at the pub at any time and nothing will happen, all is good, nothing breaks. If you share your private key, then you have troubles, then you should think about revocation and issuing a new key and blocking the old one. Right, so how do these keys look like? I copied it out. And the nice thing about ED25519 is it's really small, so it actually fits on a slide you can still read. That's the whole key, it's text. I mean, it's encoded binary stuff, but that's the thing you can look at. That's the stuff you can hand around, that's the stuff you put on the server so you can authenticate later on. I'll show you in a second. And how does the private key look like? Again, similar, it's an OpenSSH private key. And you should never do what I did because it's just demo data, so it's fine, but usually you should never show this to anyone. Right? So we have our 2 files. Before we talk about what we do with these 2 files, I mentioned before that you still have to specify, where is it? You still have to specify the ED25519 elliptic curve as the key format you want. This is going to change, thankfully. So fresh off the press, ED25519 will be the default for starting with the next version of OpenSSH. So next version of OpenSSH will have ED25519 per default when you create a new key, which is awesome. one parameter less to add. Right. So, as I said before, we put the key on the public server. We keep the private key locally. How we get the public key on the server so we can use it for authentication, I will show you in a second. One word on the public-private keys. They are free. They are cheap. They are free as in free beer. They don't cost you anything. So please, please, please use more of them. Create one for each service that you use. If you have one service where you have a test and a production environment, use different keys for the private and production for the test and the production environment. If you're a consultant like me, yeah, sorry, I am, use one private key at least for each customer. If one of your customers actually has a test environment, which would be a surprise, please use different key for test and production environment. It's easier and less embarrassing to tell the customer, look, I lost your key, or your key got compromised, than my only key got compromised, and you don't have to tell one customer, but 25 customers. So please create a key for each service you use. If you use GitHub, GitLab, use separate keys. Don't use the same key. Don't use the same key for a public service like GitHub. Sorry, coming back to that example all over again several times. Don't use the key that you use for GitHub also for your local VMs you want to SSH into. Use a separate key. With the config, I will show you, it's really easy to switch between keys. You don't have to think, and we all know we don't want to think, especially not even 24 hours after Rakia leak. Thinking is really, really hard, and we don't want to do that. So please when you're sober, create yourself a bunch of keys and use them, and it will save you a lot of headaches. Not Rakia leaks, but. So, how do we get the public key to the server so we can authenticate against the server? Well, on the server there's a file, or there will be a file called authorized keys. And that file contains your public keys. So you could even use two different public keys to log into the same service, to log into the same machine. This can also be centralized, but usually it's really used on a per user level. So how do you get there? Well, one thing is, of course, you can copy and paste. That's always an option. But there's actually a nicer option. It's called SSH copy ID. And what I really like is there's actually development. This is actively developed because older versions of SSH copy ID did not check which key you uploaded. So older versions of SSH copy ID allowed you to upload your private key to the server, which is a bad thing. So at some point in time, they decided, well, let's check if it's actually the public key and don't let you copy the private key anymore. So I can wholeheartedly recommend that tool if you're on a more recent version of Linux. Something that has LTE in the name usually works quite well by now. And that SSH copy ID thingy actually wants two parameters from you. The first one is -i. That's basically the path to your public key. We already established it's in your home directory, in the .ssh directory. It's called demo.ed25519.pub. Again, that's why I'm trying to use speaking names, because it makes life easier. And of course, it wants a target. Where should I copy the ID to? And in that case, everything in the SSH ecosystem uses your config file. Of course, you can now say SSH copy ID demo.pub to username @server. But you could also just type demo, and it will just work as well, because it also reads your config from the config file and does that for you. So again, short demo, so you don't fall asleep on me. I have something prepared. Again, ls.ssh. I have my public key in here, and what I do now is copy my ID, my public key, to the server that is behind the alias demo. It says, okay, checking, attempting, and it tells me, okay, I still have, so it could copy multiple IDs as well, but usually you just copy one. I have one key I want to put on the server, but of course it can't put it on the server unless I'm logged into that server. So it now asks me, because we haven't configured it otherwise, for the password of the server for my user. It actually works. And now it tells me, okay, I copied one key to the server. We are ready, we are done. You should now be able to authenticate using that key. The fun thing is, it says here, now try logging into the machine with SSH demo. So it already got ahead of you because it tells you, it implies you already configured your config file in a way that you don't have to specify the ID file, which we haven't yet. So let's do an SSH. We want to use our private key, because on our laptop we want to use the private key to connect to demo. And with the private key, there's going to be communication between the SSH client and the SSH server. They verify the certificates, they verify the whole crypto thingy, they do the crypto dance. I would like to have a visualization of a crypto dance. And now, and if you look closely, it will show you enter the passphrase for key. So it's not asking for my password, it's asking for the passphrase of the key. So my password is not leaving, my passphrase is not leaving my laptop. With the password that I used before, it gets transmitted to the server. Here, I'm just locally decrypting basically the ID file. What was my passphrase again? And it worked. I now authenticated to the server using my public-private key infrastructure, which is awesome. But we can do better, because typing this in every time, we just brought it down to SSH demo. Could we do that again? Of course we can. Because as I said before, where is it? As I said before, below the keyword host, we can actually add more parameters. Everything you can specify on the SSH command line. There's usually also something that refers to it for the config file. So what we want to do is we want to set the preferred authentication to use a public key. So we're telling SSH, use public key authentication before everything else, like username, password. And we are also pointing to the identity file. So basically that's our private key. And if you combine this with what I've shown you before, you can have multiple identity files, you can have a single identity file for a group of servers, like for all test servers have the same identity file, for all production servers have the same identity file. So you can mix and match with what I've shown you before. So let's do this, because of course you're skeptics and you don't believe me. .ssh config. We have this, and I want this here as well. Yep. So again, I just added what I've shown you on the presentation. Right, quit. Feel free to do a presentation on how to exit VI. And now we should be able to, again, demo. SSH demo, and it asking me for my passphrase without me specifying anything else. And I'm logged into the server. Hooray! Awesome. So, of course, I said before, you can also copy and paste the whole thing. There's nothing magical in there. So if you look at the, let's do it this way, ls.ssh, we are on the server. So on the server, we don't have our keys. Your private key should never be on a server. If it is, that's a mistake and you should fix it. But we have a file called authorized keys, and if we look at that, SSH authorized keys. Usually I don't use cut, but for presentations it's nicer than using less. As you can see, this is your public key. It's the same, it's similar to the one I've shown you in the presentation. Nothing secret about that. You can basically put that on your right next to your Wi-Fi password on the pin on your pin board. Right. So I said before, did I miss something? Let me check. No, we did that. Yeah. So I said sysadmins, DevOps, site reliability engineers, whatever you call them these days, are lazy. So if I do this, I still have to enter my passphrase. And usually you don't use a simple passphrase like I'm using here for the demonstration because I don't want to type in 64 characters every time I want to show you something. So this is still not really useful, right? If you have proper security, you have proper passphrases, you have proper passwords, we still have to type a lot of stuff. Fortunately, SSH has an option for you. It's called SSH agent. That's a small program that runs on your computer that stores your unencrypted keys in memory. Of course, there's always one person in the audience. Oh, no, Hetty left already. That says, yeah, but they're unencrypted in the memory. Well, if you're a target if you're the target of an attack that has access to your memory and can access your keys from the memory, you have other problems. So for us mere mortals, that's fine. The nice thing about SSH agent is it runs in memory, it stores passphrases, sorry. No, it doesn't store passphrases, it stores the actual key unencrypted in memory, so you don't have to enter the passphrase every time. It communicates through sockets, so it's available to all other programs that use SSH, so SCP, SSH, all can communicate through SSH agent. And modern operating systems, so Linux, Mac OS, not Windows, have something like this incorporated into their environment. So GNOME Keyring, Key Wallet, the Mac OS thingy, whatever it's called, implement this functionality, which for you as a user implies that either all your keys can automatically get unlocked by logging into the operating system, or, and this is what I'm going to show you, you have to add your key once to the SSH agent, and as long as your session is alive, as long as your session is running, you don't have to enter that passphrase again. The command to do that, so SSH agent, as I said before, usually already runs, is set up for you, you don't have to do anything. You control it through SSH add, that's the actual command you need. SSH add has a few command lines. It can, with -c, it can ask you for permission every time a program wants to access a certain key. So you can say, okay, for the keys for my production environment, I want my system to ask me, do you really want to use that in case a malicious actor subverted your system or something. And you can also remove keys from the SSH agent, which is very handy if you're doing presentations and adding and removing keys all the time, so you get your presentation right. So I've already shown you how to connect with a passphrase. So let's connect without a passphrase. I'm on the client, which is good because that's where I should be. And I've shown you how to connect with the passphrase. So what we want to do is we want now to execute SSH add and add the my private key to the SSH agent. Thank you. You're not seeing this. Here we are. This is not going to work. Damn it. Give me a second. I knew something is going to break. I knew it. Yeah. Now we are talking. So, copy. This is just due to my to my stupid setup here. I'm sorry. All good? Am I breaking something? Ah, okay. All right, so SSH agent. Yeah, no. Copy, paste. Hooray. So, now we should be back in business. So the command I wanted to, no, that's not the one. Command I wanted to add was, where is it? Here. I wanted to add my private key to the now running SSH agent. And now it thankfully works and asks me for my passphrase. And I have my identity added to the SSH agent, which I can, for example, check by doing an SSH add -L. And it tells me, yep, there's already one key in there. And as you can see, it also shows you the command, the comment of that public key, which, as I said before, is always handy to know which key is which and which key is doing what. So if I now do an SSH to demo, the SSH client should now recognize, oh, there's an SSH agent running. Let's ask the agent if he has already he, she, it, we don't know, unfortunately, if the SSH agent already has my key available so I can log in, and whee! It actually worked once I got it running. Thank you, thank you. Pity applause is always the best applause. Thanks, I'm used to it. We now have authentication against an SSH server without me entering my passphrase every time I want to authenticate. Just to show you that I'm not bluffing here, I'm doing this again, and and it's not asking me for the passphrase. So that actually worked. The nice thing about this is, let me disconnect here. This again works for everything SSH, SCP, SSH, rsync through SCP. That's all connected and it all uses the same thing. It even uses, if you want to do an SCP of the README file I have here to demo, again, I could use leyrer at sshserver.example.com, but again, I can use demo and I can do a /var, do a double tap on the tab key. Hello? Yep. And it gives me a type ahead of the directories on the server. So that's a freebie you get with public key authentication, private public key authentication. You get type ahead on the remote system. Depending how far away that is, it might have some lag to it. I had a server on the west coast of the US. You don't want to do type ahead there, especially not over business connectivity. So we already covered remote autocompletion. Anyone here using Windows? Okay, a few. I have good news for you. This also works on Windows. It's a little bit more complicated because nothing is easy on Windows. But if you're using PuTTY, and basically all SSH clients I know that are natively running on Windows are somehow based on PuTTY or using PuTTY. PuTTY comes with tools called puttygen, PuTTY agent, and of course the SSH client PuTTY. PuTTY is your keygen, so PuTTY will create your key for you, your public-private key pair. PuTTY agent is the same thing as SSH agent. You have to start it every time you start Windows, but other than that, it's the same boring thing. It creates your key for you. You have to watch out because the public key you can save is not in a format SSH will understand, so you will have to copy it from the field up there. And PuTTY agent also looks the same. And in PuTTY itself, you can specify the private key you want to use. Rather quickly, because we're running out of time, I think, more or less. Okay, thank you. A few more minutes. Okay, that's good. I talked about the SSH config, and I have / want to talk about it again. For the SSH config magic, the first parameter obtained, the first obtained value for a parameter will be I'm an old man, I can't see. But we'll figure it out. According to my clock, I'm already talking for 45 minutes. For each parameter, the first obtained value will be used. More specific host declarations should be given near the beginning of the file, so you want to be as specific as possible at the beginning of the file and as general, and the more general you get, the lower in the file you will be, because otherwise it will not match. So put some general defaults at the end, not at the beginning. That's one thing to keep in mind. As I said before, you can have per domain configuration, not only for identity files, for all other parameters as well. I like the unicorn thingy. And as I said before, you can have an asterisk for catch-all at the end. Identities only is one parameter I strongly recommend, again. For some SSH servers, what happens is, the SSH client will throw all the identities it knows to the server. So pick one, right? Catch. What happens at some servers, or most servers, is it will freeze up after 3 attempts and will just go away, right? And will block you. So what identities only yes means is it will only throw the identity that you configured for that host to the server, which is best practices because you're not leaking information, and of course you're not overwhelming the poor server, and so on and so forth. User roaming no is a workaround for CVE for an older one. Languages I had to use, and this went around Mastodon in the last few days. Compression, yes. If you're using SCP, secure copy, compression is per default off. So if you're transferring large text files, lore ipsum, Wikipedia, whatever, they will not get compressed, and it takes a long time, so compression helps. And CPUs nowadays are fast enough. If you're still running a Pentium 4, think about an upgrade. How long do I have now? Give me an estimate. 10 minutes. Awesome. It's unusual. What you can also do, and this is, as I said before, I'm a consultant. That's the correct word. I'm a consultant. I work with different clients, with different customers. So what I like to have is an SSH config for each customer, separated from the other customers. So what you could use is a conf.d directory, where you separate your configuration files per customer. So you have one file per customer, which usually helps with figuring stuff out. Again, so that's the basic stuff. Who of you works in corporate, enterprise, government-like environment? Few of you. Who of you don't have to, who knows someone who works in a, sorry. Let me rephrase. What usually happens in those kinds of environments is they do not expose their servers to the internets, right? So what you usually encounter is something they call Bastion host or Jump host or Citrix farm. So what usually happens is the server you want to reach is not directly accessible, but you have to jump through hoops, so to say, to get to that server by using a so-called jump host. So if my demonstration environment is working, what you usually do is you SSH into demo, or no, let's do it properly. You SSH into the Bastion host. Of course, now you know you already have a config file with the Bastion host. You call it Bastion or Jump or whatever. And once you are on the Bastion server, you SSH into target.local. Local is a strong indicator that it's a local server. It's not reachable from the internet, from your SSH client. Of course, we have never connected before, so we connect. And again, it's asking me for my password, because why not? Not the passphrase, because we haven't configured anything on that server, because we never connected before. And I'm on the internal server. This is cumbersome. I have to enter my passphrase. I have to enter my, no, I don't have to enter my passphrase because we fixed that. But I have to SSH into one machine, SSH into the other machine, enter my passphrase. Is there a more intelligent way to it? Of course there is. So we do the manual jump. I showed this to you. It's called jumping, or jump host is the configuration term for it. It's -G or -G, capital G. And after that, you define your Bastion host, your jump host. Again, it's an SSH command. So instead of Bastion, you could type in username at server name, yada, yada, yada. Again, we are lazy. We don't want to specify this on the command line. We want to put this into the config file. As I said before, this is doable. So I hope this is still readable in the back. We have the definition of our Bastion host at the top. So that's sshexample.com. And we have our internal server. And for that internal server, we have a host name, which is target.local, which is not available from the internet. We have a username, which is leyrer. We can also define a public-private key. We will do that in a second. And we can define a proxy jump parameter, which will tell SSH, in order to get to that target.local server, you first have to connect to the Bastion server and then jump on to the target. And before that question comes, yes, you can have more than one jump server. You can do a triple jump or a 5 jump. After 3, usually the latency will get rather bad, but depending on your connectivity. So let's try that. Hopefully it will work. As I have a few minutes, it should work. So again, I am on my client machine, so I'm editing. This narration is for me, so I know what I'm doing, not for you. I know you all know what I'm going to do. I want to edit my config file. And we already have our Bastion host here defined. I think you're all intelligent enough to deal with the fact that I'm using my initial server as a Bastion server as well. And I will edit my proxy jump statement to the config file. Let's do it this way. Let's have some fun. So, as I said before, oh, I didn't. Let's do this. So if I do a SSH target.local, that's what I wanted to show you before. Doesn't work because it's an internal server. There's no DNS entry for it. There's no firewall rules, blah, 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 blah. So let's do it again. Thank you. So if I now I have my configuration file ready, and I can tell it, hey, I want to connect to target.local. Stupido. Of course the error is on my side because I want to connect to my alias that I defined. I defined the alias internal. That was only to check if you're still awake. Internal, SSH internal. And what is it? I sure you want to continue? Yes. I don't, yeah, okay, I went ahead of myself, thank you. I already put in the preferred authentication and the identity file for the target.local, but I haven't put my authentication, my authentication keys there. So let's do it slowly. Let's do it again. And now it's asking me for the right thing, which is the password for target.local. It's not asking me anything about the jump host because that's already configured, that's already done through the passphrase and the public-private key thingy. So now I'm again on the internal server and I already skipped all the stuff about SSH into the first machine. It's all done for me by SSH. And what I can now do, I can add my public key to the server, because you never add the private key, you add the public key to target.local internally as well. And then I will be able to authenticate with my passphrase, with my public-private key pair as well. Let me do that. So cut.ssh.demo.pub. The pub thing is important, as we noticed. Only problem here is with copy pasting with the demo setup I have here. So let's see if this works. This should work. So you could do a copy ID as well, yeah. I just want to do the copy and paste stuff as well, so I've shown you this as well. So if I SSH into internal, it asks me for my password, and here I don't have I don't have a .ssh directory, so let's create one. .ssh, change mode 770 to .ssh, cd ssh. 770, yeah, not 8, 0, sorry, my mistake. And if I remember correctly, it's authentication, what's it called? Authorized keys, thank you. Bonus points for you, sir. So, yeah, I'm right. VI authorized keys. See leyrer struggle live on TV. Just add it here and save it. Change mode 660. Authorized keys just in case. And now, as no, because I removed it first. Where is it? There is it. Now I can edit my config file on my client, add the identification, the private key as well, and if I connect to internal as well, look ma, no passphrase. Thanks. It's once you do it 2 or 3 times, it's really easy. You don't have to be afraid. It's really. I'm just struggling with it because I'm old and lazy and everything. So Again, and we are down back to SSH internal. I don't have to SSH into the first. I don't have to SSH into the second server. Add a third one, feel free. What I've shown you with the passphrase is the right way to do it. You will find a lot of instructions on the web that you should use agent forwarding for what I just shown you. Don't use this. It's insecure. You don't want to use it anymore. The jump host is the way to go. Jump host usually works. If it don't works, there are ways around it. It's cumbersome. It's not as secure. You really want to use the jump hosts as I described them to you. If you're using agent forwarding, you run into the problem that a malicious actor on the jump host could actually get access to your unencrypted private keys and use them to authenticate against other services. So you don't want to do that. You want to do it as I've shown you before with the jump hosts, where every connection is encrypted. So you have an encrypted channel inside an encrypted channel inside an encrypted channel. So your jump host never sees any data that you send to the actual target machine, which is a good thing. We want that, right? As I said before, there are fallbacks. You can use other methods to emulate that through the proxy command. That's the way we did back when I was young and still had hair. So that's basically about it. I do have a few backup slides, but the question is, what would Tonimir ask now? So thank you very much for your attention, and if we have time, questions. Do we? A few minutes? Yeah. Yep, perfect. Any questions? What did I do wrong? Tell me. Of course.
You had issues with agent running on your
Yep.
system. I sometimes have that when I jump through the server to the server manually. So what did you do on the remote host to enable
I
agent?
didn't do anything on the remote host. That was my local machine. That was my demo setup where I had I have a virtual machine which I basically used as a client. And there I didn't have a graphical user interface. I didn't have the GNOME key manager. I didn't have anything. It's just a bare bones machine where I manually started the SSH agent, and then you have to export the environment variables so the other applications know where the SSH agent is.
So that's because there's no GUI and the wallet and GNOME agent wasn't started.
Yeah, so usually what you do if you have a machine like that and you want to use SSH agent, you have that that call and the exposure of the environment variables in a .bash RC file or something and execute it from there. But again, please, as a novice, as a beginner, as an intermediate as you are by now, forget everything I told you in the last 2 minutes you don't want to know. Use the stuff that comes with your graphical user interface. The guy in the back with the nice haircut.
Thank you for the talk. A friend of a friend told me in Windows you don't have to use PuTTY anymore. With WSL2, you can use KeyPass as a key agent. Yeah. Map the Windows socket into the WSL Linux as a Linux socket and use it there for SSH connections.
I'm looking forward to your, this is the year of Linux on the desktop talk next year where you show this.
It's not that much. I do a lightning talk about it.
But yeah, but with the Windows subsystem, of course, there are other options. But I'm old, I prefer PuTTY.
Yeah, so hi. A fun fact, I think Windows started shipping OpenSSH client relatively recently. So yeah, they're a bit late to the party, but
they see the light eventually. It takes them decades, but they will.
Yeah, and also a thing you mentioned, users should always specify the keys in the configuration file. I had that trouble when I started using SSH. I didn't know about that, and I had like 10, 15 keys in my directory. and the client tried to use them all on my GitHub account, and it blocked me after like 3 or 5 attempts.
Right.
So yeah,
That's
a must, definitely.
That that's why the identities only thing is about. That's why I stressed it. Of course, this never happened to me, and one more, 2 more, or are we out of time? No time? Okay. Well, as we are out of time, you will find me at the bar. Thank you very much for your attention. Have a great BalCon.